Welcome to OLC 4.0. This is class 31, and we are working on assignment 42, part A today. It is Monday, April 8th, 2024, and I am Jillian Percy. All right, if you are trying to reach me, Facebook or YouTube, I have the same address, capital G, capital P, E-R-C-Y, space, capital W, A-H-S-A. If you want to send me a question about an assignment, send it to jillian.percy@nnecschools.org. If you want to call in while I'm in the studio, 1-800-465-7144. And if you want to talk when I'm off the air, 1-800-667-3703, extension 2211. When you're sending work, please send it to studentwork@nnec.on.ca. Please include your full name, the course name, assignment number and name. If an assignment asks for both a rough and a good draft, please label which is which and include them both in the same email. All right, today's work. We are going to understand direct objects, identify and locate direct objects, read an article about how to find scholarships for post-secondary education, summarize the main steps in the article, answer questions about the article, and apply the article information to your own life. Why do we even bother learning grammar? Well, when we talk, we have so many ways to get across our meaning. Facial expressions, gestures, or actions, such as crying, laughing, raising our eyebrows, body language, tone of words, in addition to our actual words. And if people are confused, they can ask questions, and we can clarify our meaning or give additional information. There's a whole kind of back and forth process in talking that just isn't there in writing. And that means we're forced to pick our words very carefully and how we present those words. So sometimes in writing, it can be the smaller, trickier parts of language that are affecting our writing so that it isn't as clear and understandable as we want it to be. So it isn't about doing everything correctly. It's about making sure we're understood, right? Spelling mistakes can accidentally confuse our readers. Punctuation mistakes can make it unclear what you're conveying. Is it in a question, an exclamation, a statement? Sometimes grammar errors can confuse others, so they are unclear who is acting, when something happened, or what your meaning is. As well, sometimes when we are editing, things aren't as simple as the parts of speech we sometimes learned in school. So it can leave us unsure if a sentence is grammatically correct or not when we're checking it. So that's why we're tackling some of the more advanced grammar, so that when you are reviewing your own work, you've got the confidence that you've done it well, or that you know how to change it if you want to. So direct objects. Direct objects basically come after the subject and the verb, and it receives the action of the verb. A direct object can be a singular noun, a single noun all by itself, a pronoun, a noun phrase, or a noun clause. So these sentences are all using a noun as the object. Jimmy threw the ball. Beth watered the garden. Kyra drove the truck. The big scary dog ate the rat, which I thought was gross. She couldn't wait for him to leave so she could practice the piano. Pronouns can also act as a direct object. Things like Jessica ate it. The gravediggers buried him. The doctors healed her. Everyone was happy after the cops saved them from the bank robbers. The giant tree squashed him when it fell. Noun phrases can also be used as direct objects. A noun phrase is a group of two or more words acting together. It's often a noun with adjectives. A noun phrase can be a direct object, just like a noun all by itself. So some examples might be something like a new car, the tall tree, the old cardboard box. So for example, we crushed the old cardboard box. He drove a new car. The little girl climbed the tall tree. She ate all the cookies since her mom was away. After his dad left, the little boy broke some of his toys. We can also use noun clauses as direct objects. That's where it's starting to get kind of tricky, I think. A noun clause, remember, it has to have its own subject. Usually that's a relative pronoun, which we'll talk about here, plus a verb. So relative pronouns are like that, how, why, which, whichever, who, whoever, whom, whomever, when, whenever, where, wherever, and whose. Sometimes it could start with a subordinating conjunction like if or whether. So the dog killed whoever walked through that door. And the whole phrase or clause whoever walked through that door is functioning as the direct object. My dog eats whatever falls on the floor. Whatever falls on the floor is the direct object. A homeless person sleeps wherever they can. Wherever they can is the direct object. He asked why I didn't care. Why I didn't care is functioning as a direct object. After her boss yelled at her, she wondered if her work even mattered. If her work even mattered is a direct object. As the poor woman went to the store, she hoped that her check had deposited, that her check had deposited is working as a direct object. Okay, so here we're going to be looking at these and trying to identify what word or words are acting as the direct object in the sentence. The teacher stopped the fight on the playground. So look for the verb stopped. Right after it is usually our direct object. In this case, it definitely is, right? What are they stopping? They're stopping the fight. Jason bought the cool sports car last week. What did he buy? He bought the cool sports car. So I was trying to grab the verb as well. All right, so there we go. Computers use electricity, even if they are hibernating. So uses our verb. Electricity is our direct object. Okay. The soldier fired a gun at the enemy. So what did they fire? They fired a gun. The kitten batted the ball of yarn around the room. What are they batting the ball of yarn, right? I'm not including around the room because around the room isn't a direct object. It's describing where. It's acting as an adverb phrase, actually. The police didn't stop until they found her. So at this point, until they found her is working as a direct object. The fire completely destroyed the house. So completely destroyed is our verb with our adjective, so adjective adverb, and the house is our direct object. Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. The pencil sharpener broke the pencil. Okay. Many people chose pop instead of milk. Okay, so pop instead of milk is trying to think if it's just pop or if it's the whole thing pop instead of milk. For the moment, I'm going to put just pop. And you can see that's one of those things with grammar where small things can be tricky. All right. So today we're going to look at assignment 42, part A. This is part of lesson 18, preparing for success beyond high school. We're almost finished this course. In your package, here's what it says. Lesson 18, preparing for success beyond high school, 60 marks total. In this lesson, you'll read an article provided, answer questions to demonstrate your understanding, do further research into the topic, and finally, write an information paragraph to share your knowledge. Part A is worth 20 marks. Read the article entitled, A Guide to Scholarships, Awards, and Applications by Rob Taylor and answer the questions that follow. Be sure to use complete sentences. So I'm going to include the article over the next few pages because it's pretty important to the questions. A Guide to Scholarships, Awards, and Applications by Rob Taylor. When I was in school at both the University of Toronto and Ryerson, I didn't receive a cent of scholarship money. I did receive an honorarium for being president of the Student Residence Council at U of T Scarborough, and I did receive some money from the Millennium Scholarship Fund, but that was more loan relief than a scholarship. I had to be in debt to get the money, and it was applied directly to my OSAP debt. While it was nice to have less OSAP to pay back, having some actual cash would have been nice too. The reason I didn't receive any scholarships was twofold. First, I wasn't a brilliant enough student to be automatically chosen to receive a scholarship. I got by with high B's and the occasional low A until my last year at Ryerson, when I seemed to hit A's pretty much across the board. And at that point, it was too late to get a scholarship. The second reason I didn't get any scholarships was that I was ill-informed. This was partially due to the limited resources available to me and partly due to my own laziness. When I was in high school, there was no World Wide Web, and internet was a funny sounding word my uncle used occasionally. I wasn't all that close to my guidance counselor, and I wasn't even thinking beyond the summer when I applied to university. I didn't apply for any scholarships. Heck, I didn't even look for any scholarships. I thought scholarships were like for football players going to school in the States. So why am I now writing an article to help students get scholarships? A part of my duties as senior editor at Edge Interactive is overseeing the content of a family of websites, which include schoolfinder.com, myschool101.com, and scholarshipscanada.com. Part of what I do is to look after the large database of scholarships, well over 60,000 individual awards awarded by over 300 organizations across Canada. Each year, we compile all of the scholarships in our database that are for students who are already in or who are going into the first year of college or university and publish them in the scholarshipscanada.com entrance awards directory. So basically, I'm a guy who has read, written, and edited information on thousands of different scholarships. I've also talked to hundreds of students about helping them with their scholarship searches and written several articles published on our site and in the directory dealing with scholarships, grants, and loans. What I hope this article will do is to fill you in on the things I've seen and heard in the hunt for scholarships so that you will be better armed than I was. Know your armory. It's important to know what you have in the way of strengths. The majority of scholarships are still based on grades, but some administrators are starting to look for other attributes in students as well. To know what you can get from a scholarship, you have to first know what you have in the way of assets. Think about, do you participate in any extracurricular activities like after school clubs, participate in school events, get involved in sporting events, help out in your community at all? Like if you do work at the animal shelter or at the mission or help out at the Legion, work on student council, volunteer anywhere. Have you ever been in a play, worked on a farm, run for office, like a student office thing, been on an exchange program, a travel program, grown vegetables, written a play? You get the idea. Anything that makes you different from the other students applying for scholarships is important. I recommend sitting down with your family and thinking about it. Make a list. You might even want to run through your days. Something that seems routine to you might be extraordinary to someone else. I'd also recommend talking to your guidance counselor about how to approach your search for scholarships. It's their job to help you get ready for post-secondary education, and they're good at it. Similarly, do you or your parents belong to a union or an employee organization? Some unions are reluctant to post information about scholarships anywhere except internally, in other words, like inside their own business, since their scholarships are open only to members or children of members. Check with your or your parents' union rep or their office. Are you or any of your members of your family veterans, like in other words, you've served in the military, or children of veterans? Veteran organizations give out good chunk of scholarships. Maybe your parents belong to a lodge or a club that has a scholarship for members or children of members. Look into the activities you are involved with. Make a list of possible sources of money to go after, like work or a club. Sometimes high schools offer awards or have specific scholarships associated with them. Generally speaking, the guidance counselor or the principal will have information on these programs. Statistics to back up what I've just written. So, to prove that I learned something from my professors and instructors, let me back up what I've said in the last two sections with some facts. Of the 7,363 individual scholarships listed in the 2004 scholarships.com entrance awards directory, there are 17 that require some sort of agricultural involvement, 262 that require athletic involvement, 631 that require some sort of extracurricular activity, 615 that require some sort of leadership role, 1,115 that require school or community service, 80 that require the student to have a general disability. I want to point out leadership role could be something like you're helping in like junior rangers, or you're in charge of vacation Bible school, or anything where you're kind of helping to organize things and are in a position of responsibility in a sense. Okay, there are also many more qualifications beyond just grades. Prepare ahead of time. This is probably the most important advice I can give you, and you probably already know it. Prepare ahead of time. I have read some pretty sad emails from students looking for help because they were not prepared. One student from the Maritimes, which is over like the provinces by the east by the ocean, wrote to scholarshipscanada.com saying she was having to choose between leaving the power connected and the phone working. She had no money and didn't know whether she was going to be able to make rent the following month. I did some investigating and found that her school could have given her an emergency bursary. She met the qualifications for it, but she had missed the deadline by 2 weeks. Even if you aren't going to start school next year, I would recommend starting to look now, not to apply necessarily, but just to see what's out there in the way of scholarships, grants, and bursaries. See what kind of deadlines and requirements exist. It's better to know about an essay that's required for a scholarship 9 months before it's due, rather than finding out about it a week before it's due. Types of scholarships. I'm going to break down the scholarship into two main categories: automatic consideration and need to apply. Automatic consideration means that no application is necessary to be considered for the award. These awards are generally given out to high-ranking academic students upon entrance to a school or program, or for the highest grade in a course or program after completion. There might be other factors considered, like extracurricular activities, but basically it means no more work than applying to the school. In other words, for these kind of scholarships, as long as you apply, they automatically look at whether you meet the criteria to get those awards. That's why usually it's a grade-based type of award. And if your marks are high enough, they offer you money because they want you to come to that school. For need to apply scholarships, on the other hand, you need to apply. So on the one hand, it's more work. On the other hand, they're usually more open-ended. They might be looking for all sorts of things like having been on a certain kind of sports team or helping out in drama or leadership, or I've seen some for mature students or women only or those kind of things. It can be much different in terms of just marks. Who offers scholarships? Everyone from schools, companies, charities, and governments to private individuals. In our database, the majority of scholarships offered are offered by the schools themselves. Some examples of companies or organizations that offer scholarships who are not schools are Aboriginal Nurses Association of Canada, Alexander G. Bell Association for the Deaf, Archives Society of Alberta, Associated Male Choruses of America, Automotive Industries Association of Canada, Black Business and Professional Association, Boys and Girls Clubs of Canada, Kimiko Corporation, Canada Iceland Foundation, and a whole bunch more. Just try doing a search at scholarshipscanada.com and you'll see many others I have not included here. Start looking on the internet. Where do you start looking after you've gone through your local resources? The internet. But just doing a search on a search engine, no matter how internet savvy you are, is just going to frustrate you. What you need to do is use a specific database of scholarships organized in such a way to make searching effective. I would recommend scholarshipscanada.com. Now remember, he works for them, so of course he's going to recommend them, right? You can start looking right away with no idea where you want to go to school, but I would recommend at least having an idea. As I mentioned before, most of the scholarships in our database are for students attending specific schools. Having an idea of where you might go will narrow down the field a bit. In other words, if you know you're applying to Lakehead, then you can specifically look for what types of scholarships Lakehead offers. But if you know that you're not going to be willing to travel as far as University of Toronto, there's no point looking at scholarships from University of Toronto because you won't go there. So having an idea of where you will or won't go is really useful when you're looking at these kinds of things. The scholarships in a database tool like scholarshipscanada.com will most often not be a complete explanation of everything you have to do to get the scholarships. This is because of space issues, both in the print directory and online. So if you find a scholarship in scholarshipscanada.com that interests you, you'll have to use that as a lead and find out more about the scholarship, either by contacting the organization who offers it or by looking at their website or print literature. And in fact, I'll show you later, but usually there's a little section that says, call here or check out here for more information. Follow every lead. A lead is just like a possible source of money or information here. If you do find a scholarship that leads you to another piece of literature or another website, check it out carefully. They may have posted a new scholarship that we haven't gotten to yet, or they may have changed the name of it or the requirements of the scholarship. Scholarships are like a trail that you follow. Explore all the forks in the path before you go home. Preparing an application. This is probably where I'm the weakest in giving advice. As I mentioned before, I've never applied for a scholarship myself, and this part of the process is one I rarely see. However, from what I've learned by talking to administrators and students, and what I've applied from building resumes for jobs, which is a similar process in some ways, the most important thing is to be informed. Make sure you know everything about the award before you apply for it. Be sure they or you meet all the requirements. A lot of administrators who speak to me tell me that they are frustrated by the number of students who apply for awards, but who do not in any way qualify for them, or by those who may be eligible, but who have forgotten some detail of their application package. So in other words, if we were looking at the Aboriginal Nurses Association of Canada, they're probably offering an award to somebody who's going into nursing and someone who's Aboriginal. If you're not going into nursing or you weren't Aboriginal, there wouldn't be any point in applying because you're not meeting the basic criteria. So always check what are the basic criteria so that you know you meet them. Like for a job application or a resume, spelling, grammar, and sentence structure are very important in any kind of scholarship application. Read what you write again and again. Could you say something more succinctly? That means more briefly, more effectively. If so, do it. I come from a journalistic background, so I kind of hate the elevated language a lot of people use when they're applying for jobs or scholarships. If it's done right, then it's pretty cool. But most people aren't good enough writers to do it well, and it comes off sounding awkward and weird. Again, that's not me talking, that's the writer, okay? I don't necessarily agree with him. I would try to keep it simple. Throw a couple of appropriate, elegant words are always nice. Plus, if you keep it simple, you get to say more. But this is my opinion. It could depend on who your audience is. Finally, try to think of an application letter for a scholarship the same way you think of a letter that you would write when you're applying for a job. What makes you more deserving than anyone else for this award? Organize your thoughts. Take the time to figure out who will be reading the letter. If possible, address the letter to them directly. If appropriate, enclose a self-addressed stamped envelope for the administrator to use to apply to you. Above all, be polite. Thank them for their time in considering you for the award. Okay. By the way, this isn't a made-up resource. This is a real resource, and you can absolutely use it if you want to, if you're looking to go to some sort of post-secondary education. And interestingly, it isn't only if you're applying to university. I thought scholarships only applied for university. You can absolutely get scholarships if you're applying to college. And you can use all sorts of things as a search term. So for example, I entered Aboriginal as a search term, right? What was specifically for Aboriginal people. Over 361 possible scholarships came up. Some are for very small amounts of money, some are for much larger sums of money. Some are for specific universities, or others are for specific fields of study, such as journalism, but could be used at any school. Some other possible search terms, hockey, brought up only one scholarship, which is not surprising, as Canadian schools don't generally offer sports scholarships. Nursing brought up 974 scholarships for that field. You do need to create an account to see some deals. You'll be able to see some things without the account, but the more detailed information, you need an account. But it's free to create an account last time I looked, okay? Keep in mind, just like he said, the site does not have every scholarship available. For example, I went to University of Windsor and I've got a friend of mine who works there. And so I knew that there is a scholarship program available for the children of faculty and staff, right? But it's not advertised because it's a tiny little market of people who can apply. So they list it on their University of Windsor website, but it's not anywhere else, right? So there are things like that. That's where they're talking about things like clubs, unions, that kind of thing. A lot of those things might not be in the big database, but they would be on that local site. So if your parents belong to the Legion, for example, maybe the Legion has a scholarship. I don't know if they do, but if they did, you would only be applicable to people who were in the Legion. So therefore, you would have to know about that and apply specifically or look specifically on their website to find information out. So after reading the article, these are the questions that need to be completed. I don't like how they formatted this. It says questions 8, 10, 12. Those are basically the marks, okay? So number 1 is worth 8 marks, number 2 is worth 10 marks, and number 3 is worth 2 marks. So number 1 says, use your own words to explain why Rob Taylor, who did not receive any money when he was going through school, has taken the time to write this article, 8 marks. Number 2, list the steps Rob suggests in order and give a brief explanation of each step, 10 marks. Number 3, do you think you will use Rob's advice in this article? Why or why not? 2 marks. Okay, so we're going to break these down and look at each question in more detail, okay? Number 1, use your own words to explain why Rob Taylor, who does not receive any money when he was going through school, has taken the time to write this article. So I was concerned that the wording of this question might be a bit confusing. Rob Taylor does explain why he's taken the time to write this article, even though he didn't bother using scholarship money himself. So in the question where it says use your own words, they want you to paraphrase what Rob has said into your own words, okay? They don't want you to quote him directly, and they don't want you to just make anything up, okay? So this question is worth 8 marks. Remember that when you're putting something into your own words, you you're trying to summarize the points, rephrase the ideas, use different words by looking for synonyms. So if Rob Taylor had said, well, he didn't say this, but I wrote this article because I got paid big bucks. You wouldn't write Rob Taylor wrote this article because he got paid big bucks. You would write Rob Taylor wrote this article because he was paid to, right? Like you would rephrase it. So it means the same thing, but it's not in the exact same words. The only time you can quote him directly is if you write Rob said, and then you would write it. But because it says use your own words, you're not going to use a quote. Normally you could, but because they've specifically said not to, that's what they're trying to say here, you have to put it in your own words. Don't quote him. Okay, number 2, list the steps Rob suggests in order and give a brief explanation of each step. Note, they mean list the steps for applying for scholarships. Hint, look at the subheadings in bold to get an idea as to the steps. Keep in mind, not all the subheadings will count as a step all by itself. Sometimes it's simply explaining one aspect of a step. So if you're not sure what a subheading is, hang on a sec. Oh, I didn't mean to grab that. Hang on a sec. See up top, start looking in the internet. That's a subheading. So some of these things are steps, some of them may not be. So be mindful of that when you're looking at them. Hang on a sec. Okay. As far as a brief explanation goes, steps that are more complicated may need a slightly more detailed explanation or more sentences. Steps that are simpler might need much less explanation or only a sentence or 2. Remember the overall goal of summarizing. Give priority to the major details or the big ideas, and then less priority to minor details. Put things into your own words by summarizing, rephrasing, and using alternate word choices. Think about how you'd explain things to a friend. You wouldn't just quote them word for word. You would just give them the gist of it, like the general idea. So here's a sample to demonstrate what I mean, okay? This one is from an article on how to plan your garden. Step number 3 was plan your garden beds. And you can see they've written quite a lot on it. So I'm going to read it and then we're going to think about how to summarize it, okay? Once you know where you want your garden, decide on the type and size of garden beds. Raised beds are attractive and may make it easier to work in your garden, but they also dry out more quickly. In very dry areas, sunken beds can be used to gather available moisture. Think about planting your garden in blocks or beds of plants instead of single rows. Beds should be 3 to 4 feet across, narrow enough that you can reach the center from either side. Beds should be roughly 10 feet long or less, so you're not tempted to step into the bed and compact the ground, in other words, like to stamp it down. Within the garden beds, place plants in rows or a grid pattern. The goal is to minimize walkways and maximize growing space. You only add fertilizer and soil amendments to the planting area, which saves time and money. Work with companion plants to attract beneficial insects and improve yields. Start small and make sure to give each plant enough room to grow. The seeds and transplants are tiny, but full-grown plants can get huge. Overcrowded plants have difficulty thriving, in other words, growing well. A small, well-tended garden can produce as much or more than a large, poorly tended garden. Rectangular or square beds are the most common, but you're only limited by your imagination and building skills. You can also plant your garden in a raised bed kit or in found items like old livestock water tanks or sections of a drain pipe. Okay, so there's a lot of information there, and I don't want to write everything. I just want to write the most important things. What are the big things to think about when you're going to plan your garden beds? So here's what I said was the most important things. Figure out what type of beds you want. And I didn't go into details about that, although I could have. You also need to look at what size. Beds should be narrow enough to reach everything without stepping into the garden. Possibly 4 feet by 10 feet is optimal. Plan whether to put your garden in rows or grids and leave room for walkways. Make sure to leave plenty of room around the seeds you plant so they have room to grow without overcrowding. So I feel like I've gotten the basics, but I haven't included every single detail. So when we're talking about summarizing the steps in the article about scholarships, that's what I'm talking about. Pick out the most important stuff. Don't give me all the details or you'll be writing like 6 pages worth of information, right? Okay, and then the third question says, do you think you will use Rob's advice in this article? Why or why not? And then you've got 2 marks. Only you know yourself well enough to be able to predict whether you will use this advice or not. However, you do have to explain why you will or why you won't. You cannot just write, I probably won't do it. I don't know why. To be able to give a better explanation may require some self-reflection. We usually base predictions about people's actions on their past behavior and their past actions. So what in your past or your current behaviors suggests that you might or might not follow these steps? So like step outside of yourself for a moment and look at yourself and how you've acted in the past and go, am I the kind of person who traditionally would be applying for something like this? However, sometimes we're looking at something that we've never done anything like before. So then we're basing our predictions upon people's actions or their character traits. We think about whether somebody is motivated or unmotivated, determined, laid back, ambitious, competitive, uncertain, hesitant, optimistic, pessimistic, that kind of thing. So what kind of character traits do you have that would suggest that you might or might not follow Rob's advice in this article about scholarships? So a sample answer might look like, I probably will look at scholarships in the future because, and then when you would explain your reasons for thinking that you would. Might just be like, I know I am, and then you describe a character trait, conscientious, laid back, rich, frugal, serious, casual, which means that, and then you would tell me how that character trait makes that you would be doing something or not doing something. So for example, I might say something like, hang on, I would have applied or sort of have used Rob's advice on looking for scholarships because I was partly responsible for paying the fees for university. My parents would have appreciated um, having to pay less money. Although I got good grades, I didn't think of looking into other types of scholarships, right? And like I did things like volunteer work and I was involved in drama and things like that. So it's possible I would have qualified for some other things, but it just didn't even cross my mind, right? We didn't have the internet. I wasn't aware. I was a good student. So they kind of just, you know, they didn't necessarily look into things very carefully for that. Okay. So we're finished a little bit quicker than I thought. So I'm just going to keep on going on to part of what I was going to tackle tomorrow. Okay. That was part A. This is part B. Okay. And we're looking at just question 1. Okay. There's a bunch of other questions. We're just going to tackle this one. It says, choose any career of interest to you and list 3 reasons why you might want to pursue it. 3 marks. So you need to use the same career for all the rest of the questions in this assignment. So please choose a career that you're actually interested in so you won't be bored. I've had some people try and change from 1 to 2 to 3, but then it really doesn't make a whole lot of sense and it actually makes it harder on yourself. So taking the time to pick a career that really interests you is worth the effort, okay? If you're having trouble picking a possible career, I've included some different information on choosing careers. Um, we looked at this earlier. It's the Canadian Job Bank website. They've updated it though, so it looks a little bit different than how it looked when we looked at it earlier in the year. Here is the new kind of website. If you go to the spot called Choose a Career, then you get this pops up. And then if you click on to take a career quiz, this stuff pops up, which hopefully you remember from earlier in the year. And when you do these little quizzes, usually at the bottom, there's sort of a little spot that'll say something like what different types of careers might work for that. Let me kind of go in there and see if I can show you what I mean. Like I said, because they've changed things a little bit. Hang on a sec. I always find it a little bit tricky getting into things from PowerPoint. Okay, there we go. Okay. So, oh, no, 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 don't do that. Oh, okay. So I'm not going to sign in, which means some things I won't have access to. Choose the career. And then here are some different things I could click on, get to know yourself, explore the job market, plan your education, stand out, network. Now, where is take the career quiz? Okay, and then if you go down a little bit, we get these. Now I think and then personality quizzes, which we looked at before too. I'm going to take a look at this one because it's kind of quick. And like I said, I think it shows you different types of careers. Rank these 3 activities in order of importance. Which, okay, so let me think. Information, people, things. Okay. And then the next one, data. How do you prefer to work with data information? Identify obvious differences or similarities. Follow simple instructions. Math, nope. Put together, collect, store, sort, or update information. Yeah. Uh, hmm. Examine and evaluate existing information from different angles by identifying the underlying principles. discover step-by-step processes. I'm going to say this put together. That's what I like to do with data. Not that I'm a big data worker. How do you prefer to work with people? I love that the first one is you would prefer not to work with people. I think that's really funny. Anyways, help people with their tasks by attending to their basic or intermediate needs. Interact with people in an efficient and effective way to pass on information, convince or influence people, amuse, move or divert people, lead a group, transfer knowledge. I'm going to go transfer knowledge, I think. Okay. Things, I would actually rather not work with things. I'm not much of a thing person. Okay. So I like to gather information, instruct or consult people, no physical or manual work. Here's what I was wanting to find. Okay. You can look for jobs according to how much schooling you have. So you could say no formal schooling and what kind of jobs would work for that? Or what if I have high school? What are some jobs that work for that? If I have college or an apprenticeship, what would work for that? And if I had university level, what would work for that? So I'm going to go to no formal schooling just for a second. Social and community service workers. Okay. So here I could look into this. I could look at the description, the aptitudes, the interests, the ways of working with people, and have an idea whether that's something I would be interested in. And I think, hang on a second. I'm going to click on this. Okay, yeah. Another little description. Prospects means like how likely is it that you'd be able to find a job? And it depends where you're working. What are some jobs that are advertised? There's actual jobs here. What kind of college or apprenticeship can you use? What are wages? Median wage means like, what do most people in Canada make? That's going to vary a lot depending on where you live and also how much experience you have. What do you have to be good at? Competencies. So these are some things that you could look at if you're having trouble thinking, what kind of career do I want to have? Okay, hang on. So, okay. Another site that you can look at, this one is a really interesting one too. Hang on, let me see if I can get this to come up. It's another Government of Canada one. Keep in mind, Canada gets they like people to be working, so they have all sorts of like working information things. So it's the Occupational and Skills Information System. It provides a comprehensive framework of the skills, abilities, personal attributes, knowledge, and interests usually required to work in over 900 different Canadian occupations. And it also provides context for the work environment in which these occupations are performed. So you could put a keyword in if you knew the exact code, which I don't, or if you had a particular competency. So if you look at what kind of abilities or skills, what kind of skills, here are some of the skills that you might be good at. You can also um, skills match. Yep. So pick some skills that you have and then see what other ones are similar. I'm just going to kind of grab one to show you what I mean. Category, I'm going to say not skills because that's kind of different. Work activities. What are my possible things? Analyzing data, clerical activities, communicating, controlling machines and processes. I'm going to grab that and see what kind of things come up. Okay. Hang on a sec. Oh, huh. That's a little bit different than what I would have thought. Oh, look at all these. Oh my goodness. There's too many things here. So I would need to filter broad occupational category. Let's say trades, transport, or operators. Will that let me do it? Hang on. I'm not sure if it's going to work. Let me see if I search. Will it work that way? Okay, yep. Here we go. Oh, still giving me similar stuff. Okay. So you'd have to kind of flip through this one a little bit. The other one's probably a little bit more useful, but this can be helpful. Okay. So what else? Oh, the same site up here where we were looking at, you can look at things based on your abilities, personal attributes. That's like character traits. Like if you're very conscientious, then maybe accounting would work for you. But if you're kind of not a, big little detail kind of person, maybe sales might be better. that kind of thing. And you can explore it through competencies, skills, knowledge, work context, and work activities. So here is a sample answer for what kind of career do I want? I want to become a teacher because I enjoy working with children and helping them. I find instructing people on how to read is very rewarding, which is a huge part of teaching, especially in the primary grades. I also feel like I have a good sense of what being a teacher involves, since I have several teachers in the family, including my grandmother, several aunts, and my dad as well. It is a lot of work, but enjoy knowing that I am contributing to a better future. Now, if I was revising this, I started off talking about the future, and then I switched over to talking to what I'm doing now. So I would want to change that so it was all the same. It will be, hang on a second. It will be a lot of work, but I would enjoy knowing that I am contributing or might be contributing to a better future. Okay. So, and I didn't even notice that. So when we talk about revising, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about, where sometimes just mentally we make a switch partway through. Now, obviously, I am a teacher, but if you'd asked me before I was entering into the teaching program, this is the kind of thing I might have said about why I was looking into that career. So I know some people already are working, but I also know some people who are taking high school, it's because there is something else that you're wanting to do, and maybe you're needing to look into that. Okay. I don't want to go on to the next one, but I'm just going to kind of show it to you just so you can kind of get a head start if you want to. Um, Tomorrow, we're going to look at identifying resources. So that is where you're going to be researching more information on your chosen career. You can copy or print the information, highlight requirements, include any qualifications, courses, grade requirements, or other important information. That's worth 15 marks. So we're going to look at that more in depth tomorrow. If you already know what career you want, then go ahead and start looking into this kind of stuff. Like I said, I will talk about it more tomorrow. But this is what we're looking at ahead. Like I said, this is the last week for this course. We only have 3 more classes after today. If anyone has any questions, now is a good time to ask them. No? Okay. If anyone's feeling shy and wants to talk to me privately, by all means, you can call me on the studio, or you can send me an email message and give me your number and I'll call you back if people just want to talk to me privately. And hopefully your coursework is going well. Remember that you can always send me something and ask my opinion on it. I'm always happy to regrade or have a resubmission for something if you're not happy with the mark or with how things are going. All right, thank you so much for showing up today, and I am going to close. I hope you have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow.